Alrighty, everybody, welcome to Casual Sports Talk Podcast,
Mm.
Final Four College Football Edition. And now we got myself right over here, who's happy that we're going to go duck hunting in January. Here's Stewart.
Oh, man.
Yes, it is true. We are going duck hunting. I am so excited for that. Yes. And now we got a gentleman right over here who realizes that he can at least go last year on YouTube to watch the Michigan National Championship. Here's Douglas.
Heck yes, dude. If Ohio State wins it all, we'll be the only team that beat Ohio State this year.
Yeah.
I can live with that.
No, I cannot live with that. I do not want to live with that. We would beat them this year. I'm just saying. And I guess we'll start.
But you didn't though. That's the problem. You didn't, Stu.
That is the problem. That is the problem with that.
That is the problem. But hey, I was hearing them on ESPN say that you guys need to thank Michigan if you win it all because we helped you get focused.
Yes.
Helped you focus.
We did get focused on this one. So I guess it's now, like I said, since it's gentlemen, just you and me, Douglas. So we're going to discuss, like I said, the final 8 last week. And what was your thoughts about this week? Last week.
Heck yeah, it's starting to get a little bit more fun. I'm kind of agreeing with some of the opinions I've heard that the seeding could use a little bit of work. I mean, all 4 teams of the bye got bounced, so that's kind of a little bit weird. So like that was a little bit bizarre. So the seeding might need some working. But at least the games were a little bit more fun this week.
Yeah, like last week was pretty much a dull. That was a snooze fest. I feel like it's interesting, and I kind of thought about it with my one podcast, Strong Opinion Sports, talked about it. Do you think they had too long of a bye week? Because it was like 3 weeks before their conference championship to playing right there, versus everyone else that started to play. They only had like 2 weeks, and then they came back and they played.
Well, I mean, I have a theory too, and that kind of goes with like the Kansas City Chiefs too, where they took a bye, then they're getting a bye, and then it's like it's hard to stay fresh when you're playing teams that have been fighting for their lives for a couple of weeks. So like I do think that there's something to that because the teams that won, they got to keep practicing. They stayed a little bit in game shape. So I think there's a possible factor there for sure.
Yes, and it's so interesting. I do kind of agree with like what's happening with the bye week, with the complaints about the bye weeks. And kind of like I think the seeding should probably be I think it should probably be the top 4, and they should treat it like college football. I know probably the reason why they don't do that is because the conferences are saying no. I want the conference champions to get the bye week, but I feel like it kind of gets us a mediocre college football so far. But I will say this week was so much fun, so much better than last week. Even though, interestingly enough, out of 8 games so far, Douglas, only one of them was like super close and was competitive.
Yeah, and that's the problem with this too, is like I don't know. There's definitely because like that Ohio State one was interesting in the fact of like it was a game that I wanted to watch, but like the actual game itself, when Ohio State's up 34-0, isn't interesting. You know, like as a fan, like I'm not going to keep that game on the whole time. I'm going to say, "Oh, nice job, Ohio State," and then I'm going to turn it off and move on with my day. And so, like, I think they might want to like reseed it to make these games like keep people hooked.
Yeah.
Because none of these games I really like sat down and watched because most of them were fairly one sided. Even the Texas Arizona State one, like Texas was up big there late. Like they got really lucky though. But Texas
Yeah.
was up by like I forgot exactly the number, but
16
16, 18 points.
Yeah, 16 points. They had a 16-point lead and they almost blew that game.
Yes, like that was interesting, but like even that game was not very good. But then Arizona State made it good, so like there's a chance that we would have had 8 straight blowouts in this postseason, and that's kind of boring.
Yeah, it's kind of boring indeed. But anyway, Douglas, we're going to probably start with the first game right over here. We are going to start out with the first one, and we'll start out with the first one: Penn State versus Boise State. And boy, Penn State pretty much, we kind of thought that they were going to choke jobs, but we all were correct, and Penn State would win this one against Boise. First time that in the Fiesta Bowl where Boise State lost a game in the Fiesta Bowl in their entire career as a Boise State Broncos. So, Douglas, do you have any eulogies and sadness on the Boise State Broncos going out?
No sadness. I mean, more celebration of the fact that they got to be included. Because I truly think that this is more. It's good for the sport as a whole. Like it's nice to see these teams kind of get involved. It's the only part that I don't like is now when these teams make a run, all their good players are going to be gone in the transfer portal. And so like that's what kind of makes this weird to me with like a Boise. But as far as Boise, man, I mean, it was a fun season. You had one of the best two or three players in college football this year. I mean, you only lost two games, and there were two elite Big Ten teams that were also in the playoff. So it's like nothing to be disappointed about. It was a wonderful season for Boise.
Yeah, I mean it's a good season for them. I mean you can't, I can't get upset with like Boise State going out. Like I said, they did really good. They only lost to two Big Ten teams, and they're both really good powerhouses. You know what I mean? Penn State pretty much controlled this game. It wasn't really that surprising. I think none of us were surprised that Penn State was going to win this one. But good for you, Penn State, for winning this game. You didn't choke away. I was a little bit worried that you were going to choke this game away, but you did well. You finally won a game, and it's going to be interesting what's going to happen when you get to, we have the Penn State redemption arc right now, or is the narratives going to still continue?
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun game, that's for sure.
Yes, and unfortunately, to the Boise State Broncos, they will ride all the way back to Idaho.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And unfortunately, like I said, we got done with the first one. And then now we got another game. We got to talk about the interesting one. Oh my God. I thought that the Longhorns were going to blow this game. They won it in overtime, 39-31. There was at one point, they had a 16-point lead. It was 24-8. And then they almost blew this game. Oh my God. I guess we'll start with the eulogy on the Arizona State, your city that you visited, Arizona. Do you have any thoughts on them going there?
Um, I mean, what a fun year. I mean, I didn't think that this team was gonna amount to much. I saw a stat that said at one point, like 3 or 4 weeks before the playoffs, they had like worse odds than like Louisiana and Liberty and like some random schools to make the playoffs. So I mean, the fact that they were even involved just was amazing. They went on an amazing run, like a great running backs. Like they were just a really fun team, a very big dark horse. I think they were picked to finish last in the Big 12. So another one where it's like it's hard to be disappointed. Like you're only disappointed because they got it to fourth and 13 against Texas, and they probably should have won the game right there, but they
Oh,
didn't. Like they had their chance to win it for sure.
yeah.
And I mean, to get that close to Texas, I mean, that's a lot closer than most teams. Like Texas blew Michigan out pretty good. And
Yeah.
so Arizona State, you got my respect. Hopefully, they've been saying that Arizona State's kind of like a sleeping giant, they think, because it's in such a fun like area. It's right outside of Phoenix. And so like it's kind of fun to see the whole state relevant again. And hopefully the West Coast football will keep getting better.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because, like I said, this is the first time Arizona has made it to a postseason in their entire college football history, and it's so. And I mean, representing the Big 12, like I think the only representative of the Big 12 to make it this far.
I
Interesting.
think the only one, yeah.
Yeah, there's the only one, and it's crazy to think. And it's crazy to think if like Texas would have stayed in the Big 12, they probably would have gotten that bye week.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it would have
Yeah.
been interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably like Texas is probably makes that bye week. Arizona probably doesn't make the postseason on that one. So it's like it's kind of two former like competitors that were in the same conference, and now they're distant cousins now, like separate. Um,
Well, I think Arizona State was in the Pac-12 though.
oh yeah, they were in
So
the Pac-12, so it's like they're shipping away, and then now Arizona State in a few years are going to be a part of the SEC, right?
Arizona State's going to be in the SEC.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
what's
I
going
don't know. They probably will. The way college football is going. I mean, the only
to.
thing predictable with college football is that it's been super unpredictable.
Yes,
I
except for
mean, every year it's like new rules, like updates. Like they're proposing that Nick Saban's going to be some kind of a commissioner for the league. Like it's a very interesting and defining time in college football.
I mean, let's be honest. Nick Saban could be like literally the commissioner of life, and in college football, he could be the president of NCAA sports, and we would.
That's what uh, that's what James Franklin's asking for.
Oh my god! But and you know what that means? If he's president, Alabama will always be number one in the postseason.
Well, and that's the hard part. I don't know if you saw Alabama's like asking their fans to give up more NIL money. They're
Like
mad that everybody kind of caught up to them. I think they hate the NIL because it made more
parodies.
parity. And I'll say it made a ton of parity, so Alabama hates it. I mean, I would too if I won, 6 national titles or whatever it was in like a 10, 12-year span.
I'm sorry.
I
Like
mean, they haven't won one since what, 2020 now?
yeah, it's been since 2020. Yeah, and then
I
now
mean, that's a long time in Alabama standards.
yeah, Alabama standards. Oh my God, these poor Alabama fans. It's been 5 years now that Bama has not won a national title. Do you feel
Well,
bad?
and Bama lost twice in like 2024 to Michigan, which makes it even funnier.
But I guess we'll start with the, like with your eulogy. We already finished it up with Arizona, but for Texas, boy, they looked kind of bad against Clemson, but they still won. Oh my God, I thought they should have choked this game. I thought they were going to choke this game away.
I mean, they definitely should have. Like Arizona State with the lead, 4th and 13. Man, you got to finish those.
Yeah. Like they still saved it with their chinny chin chin, but still, it is just like, as a Longhorns fan, it has just been infuriating. Like, we should be better. We should be dominating these teams.
Well, that's what's hard too is you kind of wonder what's going on. Like, do they lose focus? Like, what's happening? Because both games they were up pretty good and they kind of let teams sneak back into them.
Yes.
And like they lost to like a backup Georgia quarterback and like the Ohio State's definitely favored over Texas for a reason. That's for sure.
I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. I mean, even as a Texas fan and as a Buckeyes fan, I'm gonna probably say, well, we'll digress when we get to that game. But
Mhm.
hey, they won another game, but I'm kind of nervous. I think honestly, they might be the four weakest teams in the Final Four right now. If I had to pick it, it might be Texas.
I mean, if you base it just solely on performance, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, these are four obviously super talented rosters at this point. Four big time schools that have recruited well and have a ton of NIL money.
Yes.
So like, it's not like there's a big talent gap between any of these teams. It's just going to come down to execution at this point.
Mm-hmm. It
Like,
is.
it's not like we're playing the Boise States with all due respect to Boise State. Like, this is another team that's kind of can meet you dollar for dollar in the NIL world.
Yeah, that's always true. But unfortunately for the Sun Devils, the fire hose came, and unfortunately, there's no more flames for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, they ran out.
They ran out, and now we gotta talk about my favorite game of all time, and maybe Doug's least favorite game of all time. We're gonna talk about Ohio State dominating against the Oregon Ducks, 41-21. At one point, I believe it was 34 to nothing.
It was. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Stu. I actually kind of enjoyed it. And like you might think I'm lying, but like I genuinely, the fact that Michigan beat Ohio State, I don't care if Ohio State wins it all.
Mhm.
Like it's kind of fun. It was fun to see. Like it was fun to see. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I like Oregon, but I also didn't like Dan Lanning. He was kind of a troll to Michigan this year. He kind of came in. He was a little bit arrogant. Won the league in his first year. Like we don't need Dan Lanning to think that he owns the whole conference already. Like this conference goes through Michigan, it goes through Ohio State, and it goes through Penn State to some extent. And
Yes.
so it was nice to kind of see him get slightly humbled in that one. And he took it like a man. Like he didn't make any excuses, but like it was nice to see.
Yes. It feels like it's so crazy that this game was so dominant. Like I said, I was a little bit nervous that Oregon was going to win this. I thought Oregon was the better team than Ohio State. You pretty much we had the opposite opinions, basically. You thought Ohio State was going to win, and we both thought, I hope my opinion is wrong.
Well, I mean, I
And
told you too, because I told you my least confident game was the Georgia one. Like I felt pretty confident that Ohio State would win that one. Like
yeah,
I think to beat Ohio State twice in a year, I don't know if any team in the country could beat Ohio State twice in a year.
yes. And it's so crazy. And like the quarterback for Ohio State is having a career right now. And it's so amazing right now. Coming
But
from
it's nervous though. He's 0-3 against Texas, so hopefully that changes for him.
yeah, but this is can he played as Kansas, and it's a different school.
Uh, well, Kansas, but like the Big 12 champs, Kansas.
Mm,
So
but
then beat them Longhorns.
it's still
I mean, it's a
Kansas.
different team, like no doubt about that. I'm
Yeah,
just
There's a much more different stack team than I would say, but it's Kansas. Let's be
Kansas
honest.
State.
Kansas State. I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, you're not wrong. I'm not
Yeah,
saying that you're wrong, but also they were way better than Ohio State or than Michigan. They let them demons get them.
yeah. So I'm hoping that the demons don't let him go away.
Yeah,
But then
hopefully
this
the
is where I got
Texas demons don't re-come up for him. That's all I'm
yeah,
saying. I mean,
yeah. I'm sorry, Will Howard. I totally forgot. I knew it was a Will, but I totally forgot the last name. So Will Howard just been balling in this game. 3 TDs, 119 yards, was balling. So I guess we're gonna have to talk about the eulogy, the Big Ten loser right now,
mhm.
the Oregon Ducks. Eulogy on the Oregon Ducks. They were the only undefeated team, and then they lost badly to Ohio State decisively.
You know what? I mean, this might not be true, but like, there's a part of me that wonders if Michigan's going to be the last undefeated team for a very long time.
Yes. You don't think there
'Cause,
will
like,
be?
it's going to be so much harder in this day and age to go undefeated.
Yeah, because I think you have to go at least 0-16.
Yeah, like you'd at least have to win 16 at a minimum. Um, and like that's not easy to do, man. Like these teams are so competitive right now. This like, so I don't know. I don't. Going undefeated is going to become like the NFL. It's going to be pretty hard to do in this new day and age as they add games and conferences get bigger and everything else. So it'll be fun.
It would be fun indeed. And it's just kind of like, I feel like if you're an Oregon fan, this is kind of a disappointment. Like first year coming to the Big Ten, dominating in the Big Ten, except for like Ohio State by one. But most other teams, they were pretty much did. Won the Big Ten, but then just like get absolutely clobbered by Ohio State.
Well, I mean, it sucks because I mean, obviously they beat two of the teams in the semifinal this year too. It's like that also stings. Like you beat Penn State, you've beaten Ohio State. It's like you beat two of the four teams that might win the national title. And that's going to be a little bit of a hard pill to swallow. There's no doubt about that. Like, especially for a team that's never won a national championship. Like every other team in there, they've won national titles, you know?
Yeah, I don't think Oregon has ever won one, correct?
They have not. Yeah,
And
exactly.
it
So,
and it's so like and this was a stacked roster and it's like bam, you're
well,
out.
yeah, I mean, and that's part of the criticism too is that they shouldn't have gotten that hard of a draw. Like, I mean, to be the one seed and then like have to have a rematch with Ohio State there, like that's pretty unfortunate,
But to be
you know.
fair, Ohio State was struggling. They lost to Michigan. So I think
Oh, I
they had
mean, no, that's all fair too, but like everybody kind of knew that it was kind of like it was kind of did them a little bit dirty, did them a little bit dirty. Like that should have been like even Nick Saban was like this should have been a semifinal game. This shouldn't have been Oregon's first game coming off a bye. And so
right.
that's part of the terrible part about this new seeding too is like this game would have had so much hype if it was like in the semifinals, and then it's kind of like now one of the best probably two or three teams in the country is sitting at home for the semifinals. And so
Mhm.
that part's a little bit weird because I mean we both agree that Oregon's one of the better teams, probably very possibly the best team,
Yeah.
but they had to run into the buzzsaw that has been Ohio State in these playoffs.
Yes. And I feel like for Ohio State, this is probably the easiest way to win the national title. Like I honestly think that they're almost could I say almost locked in to get the national title? Is
I
that
mean, you can certainly say it, but I mean, I predicted going into this playoff that they would lose to Texas here,
yes.
and and so like I don't think I would say guaranteed because I don't. I think Texas is underachieved, but I think they're capable of a lot better.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
capable. They're capable of a lot better, but like I said, they've been struggle busing right now versus Ohio State has been dominant. And I think this is on and I think beating the Oregon Ducks this badly was shows how good Ohio State is right now.
I mean, 100%, 10% does, and that's the thing. I mean, Ohio State's obviously an amazing team. Like they should be favored over Texas, and they are. But I also don't think it's a guarantee that they beat Texas. Like everybody's talking like they've already beat Texas, and I don't fully understand that. Because like this is a Texas team that their only losses are to Georgia.
Hmm.
Like this has been one of the most dominant teams in the country. They absolutely destroyed Michigan. They had a lot of great wins this season. And so like I don't get where everybody's just like acting like Ohio State's already won. because honestly, I think I'm probably going to stick with my gut and say Texas will win this one.
We'll see.
I think Ohio State might struggle with the physicality of Texas.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes right there. But like I said, we'll wait until we get our predictions on who is going to
Um,
win.
can't wait.
Can't wait. Can't wait. And finally, we got to talk about the final game right over here, gentlemen. We have this one important game. It is Georgia versus Penn State. Originally was supposed to be that Thursday night, but unfortunately, since they had a tragedy that happened in New Orleans, they had to postpone the game to Thursday. And Notre Dame was pretty dominant against Georgia Bulldogs. It was pretty much a domination right now in this game.
Yeah, it was. It was kind of a weird one. Like Georgia just couldn't. I mean, they had that one big play that got taken back from the sideline interference, which really cost them. I mean, the crazy part is though, Notre Dame won this game in a 54-second span.
Yeah.
Like, if you take out the last minute of the first half and the first minute of the second half, and this game was like dead even, but Notre Dame had I think it was like a strip sack and then a touchdown to end the half. Oh gosh. And then they had the kickoff return to start the second half. And so I mean that was the difference in the game was those two plays. And it's kind of crazy because the score looks a lot worse than it is. Because I mean, at the end of the day, Notre Dame won pretty handily, but it was an interesting game to some extent.
It is a very interesting game. I mean, granted, it was just more Notre Dame was just dominant. And I feel like I guess we'll have to start with, unfortunately, the eulogy on the Georgia Bulldogs. The team that I
Oh,
thought
not
could probably
unfortunately.
fortunate. Well, if you're a Georgia Bulldogs fan, if you're an UGA fan, you would think this is the worst news in the world. Everyone else is like, yay! SEC dominant. Goodbye, Georgia. Take that train back to Georgia.
I mean, I'm rooting for an all Big Ten final, I suppose, still.
Yeah. So Georgia, they got close. They did lose to Bama at one point, but they did beat Texas twice. I thought this was going to be the most dominant team, but they lost a quarterback. Do you think if they had their starter, do you think they could have beaten Notre Dame?
I mean, I think they could have. I mean, it was definitely a big factor. I mean, it's definitely not the only factor because I mean, they beat Texas without their guy.
Mhm.
So it's like it's not like they're not a quarterback driven team. They have incredible depth at all positions. But I mean, also, I don't know, it's hard to fully say how different this would have been. But at the end of the day, they didn't, and they got 3 weeks or so. They got a bye week. They got tons of time to prepare with this new quarterback. And this quarterback won them the SEC championship over a really solid Texas team. So
Yeah.
it's like it's hard to say that the result would have been too different. I mean, I think Notre Dame is better on defense than we give them credit for. Like Notre Dame's a really good physical team. And like they're one of the few teams I think that can kind of match somewhat what Georgia tries to do.
Mhm.
And that's what's hard. Like it wasn't a good matchup for Georgia either, I don't think.
No, there is like no good matchups for these top four right now. But that's the beauty of the college football playoffs right now. The
And
12
that's what makes it fun, exactly. It's like sometimes it's not about like, how good your team is, it's about how good you match up with the other team.
teams.
And it wasn't the best matchup for Georgia.
It was not the best matchup for Georgia, but I mean, I always feel like it's crazy to think like the last 4 or 5 years, Georgia has at least made the college football. Besides last year, have at least made the college football playoffs, national championship. This is kind of their worst
Mhm.
year besides last year.
Well, and that's what's fun about this parody, though, too, is like, last year they didn't make the playoff. This year they would have made it either way, but it was still, it's nice to not just see the same teams dominating. I mean, Notre Dame hasn't won one since 1988. Penn State, I think it was 1986. Ohio State, it's been a decade. Texas, it's been 20 years. So it's really refreshing to see, like, granted they're blue bloods, but they're also like not just Georgia and Alabama on repeat.
Oh my God. Don't you want the 5 years of nothing but Georgia and Alabama national championships for 5 years in a row?
Oh my goodness, it was definitely exhausting. Like I think we're out of that SEC is the best conference thing now, which is
Yeah.
really nice.
Should
Like
we
we kind
say
of got out of that.
should we have a eulogy for the fall of the SEC, the dominance of the SEC right now. If Texas loses, do we say
I mean, yeah, I think so. I mean, like that Big Ten pretty much across bowl games has been beating up on the SEC this year too. Like we had Michigan beat Alabama. We had, I think, pretty much every game except for one or two in Big Ten SECs all went to the Big Ten.
Mhm.
It's like, I mean, I would personally say the Big Ten's the best conference in football, pretty confidently. I mean, you have the defending national champs. There's a good chance that you'll have this year's national champs. So it's like, it's kind of hard to say the SEC is the best right now when the Big Ten's looking the most dominant across the board.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, this has definitely been a dominance of the SEC failures to not make it to the Final Four, besides Texas. But I mean, Georgia, so long. Like I said, you're probably going to be back here next year. Let's be honest. It's not like I feel like those
I
are
mean,
teams.
yeah.
Yeah.
Georgia and Oregon are going to be those teams that'll probably be there every year. I mean, that's what sucks. That's why you feel for like the Boise's and the Arizona State's a little bit more because you're like, man, like this was kind of like your special year. Like Georgia, you have no sympathy for. At least I don't. Because I'm like, yeah, you guys are here every year. Like we know you'll be around every year. You're recruiting with the best of them, and so you don't really feel sympathy for those teams that are just so consistently great.
No, no one feels. Let's be honest. Nobody feels consistent. Sympathy for unless you're a Georgia Bulldogs fan and love UGA. Like you're not going to feel bad. But also, we should see this Notre Dame. I'm impressed. I feel like both teams. It's going to be interesting when we get to the talk about the Notre Dame Penn State game later on. But they were dominant this game. They looked good in this game. They kept the boot on the neck on Georgia, and they never flinched once.
Yeah, no, they absolutely did. And that's what was fun about it is like you kind of kept thinking that maybe Georgia would get back into it. Like they drove down a couple of times where you're like, all right, like here we go. Here's the point where this turns into a match. And then Notre Dame's like, no, we're going to kind of keep it two scores all the way down.
Hmm.
And so it was nice to see him. And granted, they're leaving a little bit to be desired on like the explosive plays Notre Dame is, but I mean, who cares? You're in the semifinals.
You're in the semifinals. Okay, it's an ugly win, but you still made the finals. I mean, let's be honest. Would you rather be the worst Super Bowl team win? Instead,
Exactly. I just want to know what it feels like to make it.
yeah.
I mean, Notre Dame hadn't been in the Final Four since what, like I forget the year, maybe 2015 or something, where they got just destroyed by Alabama.
Oh yeah, it was Alabama and Michigan. Was it Alabama and Michigan State somehow made the Final Four?
That
And
the
then
year with Notre Dame, yeah. Whatever year Notre Dame was in it, that was rough.
yeah, Notre Dame's always been that team that's just been like in that bubble, but they just can never get in there.
Yeah, they just so it's nice to see them finally kind of figure out how to get ahead of the SEC at least for a day,
Mhm.
because they've 110% been one of those teams that you're just kind of like, why can't you guys get over the hump? Like you have every resource, but at the end of the day, you just got to figure it out.
Yeah,
And it's nice to see them finally figuring it out.
yeah. Unfortunately for the Georgia Bulldogs, you made Uga cry. I'm just saying. This year you made him cry.
Yeah, I mean, it was a disappointing year by the standards that they've created. There's no doubt about that. I
Yeah,
mean, when I talk Georgia, I think like one of the best two or three teams in college football pretty consistently right now.
yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, as a Buckeyes fan, I'm kind of glad that Georgia got knocked out. I would be scared of Georgia. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of reason to be. I mean, they're the one team that really has been recruiting as well and developing as well as Ohio State. These at least for this year.
Yes. So fortunately, Georgia, you're taking a midnight train and you're going down to Georgia. Bye. Bye, Georgia. And now look at this. We got the Final Four. This is going to be the interesting Final Four, Douglas. Interestingly enough, and I'm actually kind of excited for this one in the sense that we got four teams. And it's been a while for each one of these teams to win a national title. Ohio State's the closest one, and that's been a decade ago. It's crazy to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
You have Texas has been since 2006 when it was Vince, the greatest football game, when it was Vince Young versus Reggie Bush. I'm trying to think was it Matt Liner? Who was the USC quarterback?
Oh gosh, I don't remember if it was lineup for that game or not.
Yeah,
I'm gonna I'm gonna kind of just assume. I think so. I mean, that's what would make the most sense.
Yeah, and that was a great football game in 2006. I remember that game was at 1 in the morning. 7:30 game and ended
Mhm.
at 1 in the morning. But and then you got two other teams right here, Penn State and Notre Dame. Penn State's been since I believe 1985 since they won a national title. And Notre Dame, it's been since 1987, 88, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly. It's been a while since Notre Dame has won. I believe when they kicked a field goal against Michigan and to win it.
To win
So
the, you know,
to win that national when they used to be rivals.
they were
Yeah.
rivals. Yeah, probably up until about 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
Then they canceled the game.
Boo. I love the Notre Dame rivalry. 88.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the last year they won a
Yeah.
national title. So it's
Yeah.
crazy to think two teams since the 80s, two teams since this millennium.
Hmm.
So we'll start with the first game right now, Douglas and we're going to start out the Penn State the I'm sorry, Penn State versus Notre Dame. Two teams, in my opinion, who have need redemption. Two teams that in the last 30 years, let's just say the last 30 years, in the last decade, cannot get over that hump, cannot win games. They kind of choke. They've been struggling. One of them's going to get the redemption, and the other one the return to their memes.
Hmm. And also, fun fact: did you see that this would be the first time that a coach of like color would be in the national championship game, like the head coach?
Oh yeah, that's kind of cool. That's sort of a cool fact.
Yeah, so it'll either be Marcus Freeman or James Franklin will be the first one. It's pretty
And
amazing.
and like I said, there's two. Like I said, James Franklin has that. So I guess we'll start with Notre Dame. We'll do the positives and minuses right now.
Hmm.
Their defense looks amazing. They beat Georgia,
Hmm.
but also Penn State has looked good also. But then
Indeed.
we can also argue Notre Dame did have that one loss, but like I said, also in the positives for Notre Dame, even I feel like they probably would beat this team right now. I feel like it's the same feeling I feel as Ohio State right now. I think Ohio State could beat Michigan. I think Notre Dame right now
Well,
could beat Northern Illinois right now.
I mean, obviously they would. I mean, that's not the point, though. That's why you play the games. I mean,
Yeah,
99 out, but nobody cares about the what ifs. I mean, I could say the Lions could have beat the Cowboys every year. They didn't. They didn't.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, you can sit there and say that you think they would, and everybody knows that they would. Ohio State would beat Michigan 90 out of 100 times. That's
Yeah,
why it's so fun that it didn't happen.
no, it was not fun for me, Douglas. I'm just saying, it was not fun. It was
Well, yeah, as it shouldn't be. I mean, obviously, we all know how down people were saying that Ryan Day should be fired immediately. So it's like those losses sting
yeah,
and they're supposed to. That's the beauty of college football, I think.
y- yeah, and it's also kind of funny because speaking of Ohio State and Ryan Day, James Franklin from Penn State.
Yeah.
I feel like he has that history of just never beating. Like I said, I know I'm beating the drum. Never beating Ohio State, never beating Michigan, never winning a
Hmm.
Big Ten title, never doing
Hmm.
anything. You know what I mean? Never making it to the postseason.
Absolutely.
And then Notre Dame has a history of just like, oh, you just got here because of cupcake schedules. And then like the one year, was it last year when they lost to Marshall? They paid $1 million and they lost to Marshall and they kind of
Well,
collapsed. Yeah. So
sounds about right. Yeah, I mean that's the thing too is like they kind of play weird schedules, and like they probably should have to enter a conference. Like I think I'm with James Franklin on that one. Like I think the fact that they don't have to have a conference affiliation isn't really that cool. Like we need some kind of oversight. But yeah, I mean they definitely would beat that team again, and I mean they're that close from being an undefeated team potentially as well.
yes.
But that's why you play the games because I mean there's a lot of games that the results may be different if they were played again.
Yes. So I will go first right now, Douglas. Whew. Two teams. Notre Dame looks good. Penn State looks good also.
Mhm.
Can James Franklin not choke this one? Or is Notre Dame going to choke this one? It's like, this is how I feel like,
I mean, it's a fascinating game in like terms of those types of thoughts too.
yeah, two teams that need a redemption, and one will get the redemption, and one will return their memes. Like, their memes
Mhm.
will still continue. They still say 58.5. I really feel like Penn State's going to win this one. I think I'm going to go with Penn State. I think they win by 3.
Very nice. Yeah, I think I agree. I don't know what it is, but like I mentioned earlier, Notre Dame's kind of not having a lot of big plays. When I watch Notre Dame, they've relied a little bit on like big explosive runs, and Penn State is phenomenal against the run. So it's like I just think that there's a few different factors that kind of point towards that point more towards Penn State for me than Notre Dame.
Mhm.
Like I wouldn't be shocked either way because like I mean Notre Dame's defense has been phenomenal, but I just feel like there's just something that feels a little bit more. It feels a little bit more cohesive right now for Penn State. Like it feels like they've been just a tad bit more consistent on both sides of the ball for me. I think Notre Dame's been relying a little bit more on like defense, but like I think Notre Dame can, or I think Penn State can both beat you on defense and offense.
Yeah, that's the
I mean, Notre or Penn State has one of the better tight ends. Like their quarterback is doing really good. They have a couple of good running backs. Like so does Notre Dame, but I think Penn State just has more offensive firepower.
Mhm. So I think I do agree. I think it's going to be Penn State going to win this one. It's so funny that the odds they put Notre Dame, but I have a feeling it's like I'm going Penn State. I think this
Yeah,
matchup is good. I think it's going to
I
probably be.
mean, yeah, I agree. I agree.
I think there might be a rematch right over here. And now, Douglas, we got the final one right over here. The interesting one on Friday,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what we're going to talk about: Ohio State versus the Texas Longhorns right now. Two teams that are neck and neck. It is crazy
Mm.
that the AP poll has it really close because I don't think this game's close. What is your thoughts about this matchup between Ohio State and Texas?
Well, you said you don't think it's close.
I don't think it's gonna be close. I have a feeling Ohio State might get this one handily.
Really, that's interesting. Because I mean, I'm staying strong with Texas still. I
You're still,
truly am. Like I
yes.
don't know. Like there's just something about Texas. I just like the way that they're built this year. Like I like they have amazing offensive defensive lines. They have Quinn Ewers. They have a lot of amazing skill position. Like these teams are built super similar. And
Mhm.
so like I think it's another that one that's like a really fascinating game in that sense. But with that being said, also I think I don't know. I just feel like there's something about this Texas team where I feel like, Quinn Ewers is going to be kind of a fun story playing against his former team. There's a lot of different fun angles on this game. That's for sure.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I just like Texas for some reason. And I can't explain it, but I just have a feeling.
Yeah, I have a feeling, but I just feel
I
like
mean,
here's my problem with the Longhorns, and I love the Longhorns. I'm a Longhorns fan, and I'm a Buckeyes fan. This is a tough thing. It's like, which one of my sons do I like the most? It's like it's a hard choice to pick. I love Quinn Ewers. I love Will Howard as quarterbacks. Now it's going to be interesting. We should talk about the interesting. So Quinn Ewers was a Buckeye at one point. I think his freshman
mhm,
year, correct?
he was indeed.
So he does know the Ryan Day program. To be
He
frank,
does indeed.
he does know. Will Howard has played against the Longhorns and was a
Mm.
Kansas State player. Never could beat Texas.
Yeah, I mean that FPI was about how I feel about this game, where it feels like a coin flip, slightly favoring. Like that feels accurate to me looking at that.
Yes. So there is some advantages and disadvantages, but Ohio State has been looking dominant in these last two games in the postseason. Since Michigan, they've been looking dominant. Dominant against Tennessee, dominant against Oregon.
I mean, I might be biased since I don't think Tennessee's that good. I don't. I mean, granted, they were good enough to make the playoffs, but like I didn't view the Tennessee one as impressive just because it was at home and it was like a Tennessee team that honestly I don't know much about, and I didn't think that they were like world beaters. I felt like they just made it because they only had two losses. Like I wasn't particularly scared of Tennessee, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like I
I
don't know. Like the Oregon one was very impressive.
mhm.
I
Yeah.
do want to say that. Like I'm not trying to be a hater. Like I think they had like one of the best games of the whole season. They have a ton of talent. Like they absolutely can and probably should beat Texas, but I feel like I'm just going to stick with Texas because I don't know. Like we've seen the bad side of Ohio State too. We've seen the bad side of Texas.
Yeah,
Both
both
teams have flaws.
yes, both teams do have flaws right now. And I just feel like I'm like thinking who has been more dominant in this college football right now? And it's Ohio State. And I don't think this game's going to be close. I think they can win by 10. I think it's going to be Ohio State wins by 10.
Well, it'll certainly be interesting.
Hmm.
I mean, they definitely could, but I don't know if I see them 10 points better than Texas. Like, I don't think Texas has played their best game yet, and they're still in the semifinals.
True.
Uh,
True. But they have been struggling a lot on mediocre on teams. I feel like they should be a lot more dominant. I think they should have won 20 or 17 points against Arizona State, and they went to
Well,
overtime.
I mean that's true. I mean, they also took them. The game went to overtime too, so it's
Yeah.
not like it was just like like it still was an overtime game, but like, and that's the thing. I mean, like they had just like a bad couple of about bad 5 minutes a game, and that happens,
Mhm.
and they
Yeah.
still won.
Mhm.
I mean, because we praise the Kansas State Chiefs when they have clunkers like that. And like sometimes teams just need to go through those rough games.
I think it's go. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. But like I said, I just think the Chiefs are just the Chiefs, and I feel like college is a little bit different. If that kind of makes sense.
No, I mean it does. I'm not saying it's a perfect correlation. I'm just saying that they still won the game. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, they still won the game. So you think Texas is going to win, but by how much?
I mean, I think it'll be a close one. Like if I had a guess, I'd guess like 28-24.
Okay,
That
so
would be that would be my personal thought.
I think it's going to be Ohio State 33 to 20. Um, 33 to 20 to 20 to 23. I don't know. I'm just thinking that one.
Okay.
So
Well, it'll be a fascinating game, that's for sure.
it is. It is going to be a fascinating game. It's going to be an interesting game right now. And look at that. We got done, gentlemen. We got done with the two college football teams. Aren't you excited that we got to the Final Four right now?
I'm pretty excited. I'm excited for our next segment too on some good old NFL. That's
Yes,
the one I'm more invested in right now.
I know this is going to be very much invested because, like, let's be honest, Douglas is probably not that invested because it's like, oh, it's like the 3 out of the 4 teams you hate are going to win a national title.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what's hard too. Is like that's what's fun about college football though. Is like you have the rivalries. Like I've always been a bigger fan of college, but this is the first time. Well, not the first time, but like last year we had a good Lions team. But this is one of the first times where the Lions are actually favored to make a run, and
Yeah,
that's a pretty wild feeling.
yeah, this is definitely feels weird to do this. So, like I said, we're gonna upload this one um, Thursday, like I said, and then Friday we will upload the NFL final stock watches for we got done with the regular season. Now it's time to do some stock watches on the postseason. So
Yeah, we should hop into that so we have time to get her in.
yeah, let's get it done right there. And as always, gentlemen, I'm gonna catch you later, Mr. Gator. So as always, take care. Bye bye.